Okay, we are live. And okay, we're live. We're earlier than we planned or that it was scheduled, because that is my mistake. I'll blame it on retrogrades. But I'm here with Chrystal Goldschmidt. Goldschmidt. Did I pronounce it? Goldschmidt? Yes. Thank you. I don't think I've ever said your last name out loud. I knew I was going to mess it up. I should have asked prior. But okay. I want to introduce Chrystal here. So Chrystal and I met, and I'm very, very excited to have this conversation, this talk. This has been something, well, you and I have been having pretty light conversations over the last while with regards to the fluctuation in energy, the Schumann resonance, the solar activity, the lunar cycles. And I've been learning a lot through you about what's been happening on your side, working in the medical industry. And Chrystal and I are starting to work together, and well, we have our first retreat this month in December on the weekend of the 13th, where we're bringing together our experiences and knowledge and wisdom to help others understand themselves and to regulate. And in this particular retreat that we're hosting, we'll be returning to inner peace and trust within the body, within self. And Chrystal has a very extensive background. Chrystal and I actually met through the Odyssey of Self on Substack, very synchronistic. And speaking of synchronicities, I think synchronicity is pretty much the relationship that we have. Ever since we first met, leading up to now, it's been all about synchronicities. And the more that we've been open to listening to those messages and being part of that, the more interesting it's become between you and I. So very excited to work with you and to get to know you and have this conversation especially. And just to introduce Kristen here, Chrystal, sorry, you have an extensive background in the medical industry, not only medical, but spiritual as well. So you have a very well-rounded background, and it's including 20 years of experience in the healthcare industry with major hospital systems across Colorado and Arkansas. And Chrystal now also works with children, teens, adults, and veterans facing trauma, PTSD, sexual abuse, illnesses, grief, and identity distortion. And Chrystal's mission here is to walk beside others as they move from survival to coherence, from fragmentation to wholeness. And like I said, I'm thrilled to have you here as we are going to discuss this groundbreaking conversation. And the reason why I'm, again, so excited to have you here is where we get to get a introduction or a bit of an understanding of what's happening in the medical industry in relation to the cosmic events of solar activity, the Schumann, and the lunar cycles. So we're going to hear firsthand from someone in the industry of what happens when the energy is shifting externally and what's happening within the collective atmosphere within people's bodies and what you're seeing firsthand in the medical system. So we're going to be talking about common symptoms. We're going to be talking about patterns. We're going to be talking about how the medical industry responds, how they might even prepare or not prepare. We're going to dive in. I'm going to be learning stuff as well. But what's happening right now is the medical system, well, it's been also decades of learning through Chrystal's experience, but also through the medical system, paying attention to some of the correlations of what's happening within the emergency room, especially during maybe a full moon or during something different that's happening externally. What is happening, though, is the medical system witnesses these common symptoms and patterns that doctors or patients aren't able to understand. They're not able to diagnose through traditional frameworks. And we'll explore the growing influence of cosmic activity, including solar flares, as I mentioned, the lunar phases, how energetic shifts play out within the body. How these shifts often leave people confused or afraid because they lack clear understanding of how their physiology relates to the wider macrocosm of the universe of all. And what I've experienced firsthand, and I'm sure other listeners as well, when energy shifts externally, the inner self can feel the impact, resulting in either sensations of distortion, confusion, physical changes. And if we're not able to properly understand them, these can exasperate unacknowledged fears that are dormant within our unconscious, within our deeper self, driving an individual into worse conditions than before. And at worst case, become even medicated for something that needs our full attention and full awareness to understand what's going on within ourselves. So welcome, Chrystal. I'm so excited for you to be here. Yay. And
so excited too. This is fun.
This will be, I'm sure, the first of many. There's a lot that we're talking about, a lot of ideas that are forming. And like I said, I've learned a lot simply by listening to your insights. And let's talk about both of ours for sure. Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about your role. Let's share what your current role is in the medical system and what you're starting to notice with, or what you have been noticing regarding solar flare activity and the lunar cycles, and what are the common symptoms related to each?
Yeah. So currently, I work in the emergency department. I serve in a multimodality imaging department doing CT, so CAT scan, MRI, and regular diagnostic X-ray. And then when we're not busy with patients doing medical imaging, we basically function as emergency medical staff. So we start IVs, we have one-on-one patient care. And I would say out of all of the technologists in my field, I probably spend the most amount of time with patients just because I like to talk to them. And there's always something significant when you see a patient coming in, and especially when there's like a fluctuation of a patients with very similar symptomology about the same time, and they have no relation to each other. So I'm the inquisitive one. You know, Chrystal's crappy astrology lesson. I'll pull out my astrology guide and I'll say, I wonder what's going on in the sky today. And usually it's like almost pinpoint that, you know, there's a planet or there's a solar flare activation. And, you know, we're having a whole slew of patients coming into the emergency department with, you know, heart palpitations, heart racing, you know, different types of symptoms like that, that you can't, I mean, I guess you could, but it's very hard to ignore when you have that many patients coming in with very like similar symptomology. And I want to just backtrack a little bit. When you ask what type of symptoms do we see during different types of solar activity? So I've been in medical imaging for 28 years now, so quite a long time. And like mostly in the emergency room for the past 10. And so we do see a lot. I really started paying attention last January when we were having a ton of solar flares, when we were having the Schumann chart just complete whiteout. And I really started paying attention for my own purposes because I was having very odd symptoms, a weird rash that wouldn't go away that just popped up out of the blue, and weird brain fog that I was wondering if I was having, quote, another stroke. So I really started paying attention to that and paying attention to when my symptomology would come up. And I would journal it, right? So I would say, you know, headache, brain fog, confusion, Schumann level at blank. And then I would take screenshots of my phone just so that I could put those pieces of the puzzle together. And when I talk about the Schumann resonance, I'm talking about when we're having that really significant blast from the sun. We'll usually call it a CME, so a coronal mass ejection, which literally is like the sun is blasting heat towards the earth. And it's so interesting when I find people that will question that, because if you think of when you go outside without sunscreen, without an umbrella, you might get a sunburn. So to me, it makes sense that if you're getting blasted with a coronal mass ejection, there's more heat. Your skin might burn. You might feel different. So I was really noticing that for myself. When you talk about what type of symptomology do we see in the ER, it was very interesting. Again, really tied to that, like, I'd say late January, late February last year, when we were, again, still having those big solar blasts. I noticed that there were a lot of patients coming in with odd blood pressure issues, not just high blood pressure, but we have two different parts of our blood pressure. So we have our diastolic and our systolic. So it's the way that the heart muscle contracts or relaxes. And usually you want to see a blood pressure at about like 130 over 80-ish, right? ERs, we always give, a little bit more wiggle room. But I was seeing a lot of the diastolic numbers elevated. So where the heart would relax, which was very interesting. I've never had high blood pressure in my entire life, but I started doing, my own research study on myself. And I would check my blood pressure. I would feel fine, but my diastolic was elevated. So I thought that was interesting. We see when we get those coronal mass ejections or the Schumann is spiked, you would get a lot of people that feel like wired. They're having an autoimmune flare. We've seen a ton of that. The anxiety waves, where I don't know, it just started this morning. We hear that a lot. The headaches, the head pressure. Gosh, if I had a penny for every time I've heard that in the past 2 months, I'd be a millionaire. Because they say, it's right here. It's right here. Like, to me, it's, of course, that right in their third eye.
Yeah.
So just to kind of sum that up, adrenal surges, inflammatory flare-ups, skin reactions and hives, kidney and bladder sensitivity, emotional purging. That's a little bit different when you're talking about, physical symptoms, but you do see it when people are coming in with these, anxiety attacks. And I use the air quotes because I believe it's just our body speaking. And a lot of insomnia. I've heard that from not only our patients in the emergency room, but friends, family members, fellow practitioners, where there's just this weird insomnia type of thing that's going on in the collective for most of us right now.
So what are other practitioners or doctors doing about this? Like you have the awareness, you're looking at other factors, you're open-minded, you're starting to see the parallels between external factors and energy with people's bodies and symptoms. What are other doctors and practitioners doing about this? Because a lot of, from what I can understand, and I've also experienced it firsthand with a family member going through very similar, having exactly the same symptoms actually that you have mentioned, but reverting to their old fear and not being able to probe inward and self-examine in the way that you've been exploring. So how are other doctors and practitioners navigating this, and patients?
Yeah, so that's the biggest challenge to me, or for me, just as, I call myself a sacred witness. I witness it. They can't do much. They run the whole battery of tests. Let's say a patient comes in for chest pain. We have a protocol. We have a pathway. I mean, the patient comes in within 10 minutes from the time that they're checked in to the time they're roomed. We have an EKG completed. We have all their vitals done. We have an IV line started. We've got blood run. And oftentimes there is nothing to I'd say write home to mom about. There's nothing significant on any of those testing, on any of the testing or the results. And so there's a whole lot of nothing. They don't really, I hear that a lot. I don't really have an answer as to why you're feeling this way. My job right now is what I'll hear the doctor say. My job right here and right now is just to make sure that you don't have anything that's serious or life-threatening going on. And based on all of these tests, you don't. So I feel like a lot of the patients leave with the same questions they walked in with.
Yeah.
But an added element of frustration.
Totally.
Being in healthcare, there is this idea that if you walk into an emergency room, especially, sure, your family doctor, but an emergency room specifically, I have an emergency. I am afraid. I need help. And when somebody that is in this white coat that you believe can save you or help you, and they say, I'm sorry, there's nothing going on medically, it puts somebody back into their head, right? Spinning in their head, where it's like, well, I know that I'm feeling something. Do they think I'm lying, right? And so I feel like there's this big cycle where the patients are leaving, discombobulated and spinning into like, well, is this real? Am I making it up? Is it all in my head? Right? And so I don't know if doctors, very many of them, are even really aware of it, though. I haven't noticed an awareness really significantly in Western medicine physicians all that much. Does it happen? I'm sure it does. But I mean, there's just so many times that they don't have an answer for a patient.
Yeah. That's
so
a good
sorry, to go back, you just said like, well, what do you do?
Mm-hmm.
Medicate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Put a Band-Aid on it. Medicate. Let me give you some Ativan to calm down your nerves. Because let's give you some Ativan. Let's give you some IV Benadryl or something, right? To calm down this histamine response. Or let's give you a GI cocktail and send you away.
Yeah. And I'm feeling now, I'm seeing it more and more because also I've gone through my own process. And, when you go through your own process of unraveling these conditions and seeing new aspects of yourself, and it's almost as if you gain greater insight of other people's pain and what else is happening within these more challenging moments, right? So, or even being able to see the correlation between the relationship with humanity and other occurrences that are happening, like how we respond basically to certain events. Mm-hmm. But also I feel that events are pushing us in a way, like if it is this AI, this birth of AI, this mm-hmm. sort of like big, massive evolution of AI, people's concern with that before it was social media. If we look at healthcare and other systems in a way that we've been so used to operating with, in ways where we lose ourselves or we depend on something externally or we search outward. Mm-hmm. It's really, I feel we're getting squeezed at this time so that we will look at ourselves and start to turn that lens inward and explore in these ways that you have, that I have, that many people on this channel have as well. Mm-hmm. And it's easier said than done, but it also, I mean, I didn't get to my point of self-inquiry on this level until I got squeezed and until I kept repeating the same pattern over and over and over again and kept becoming and continued the relationship with dependencies externally on other people. And it wasn't until I really had to dig deep on this and break through all of my conditioning to understand how I was functioning before and how I was used to perceiving life. So it's quite a challenge to break away from some of these patterns that we're so used to living by. And it really are the patterns of fear are what keeps us stuck.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that saying, how it goes, the definition of insanity is repeating the same thing over and over again, expecting different results.
Mm-hmm.
So
You see my eyes rolling inward on the inside because I know
yeah,
that personally.
yeah, yeah, of course. I mean, we all do. We're all human.
Mm-hmm.
I do. I know that well. So how do we break the cycle? Like what, I guess maybe I'm jumping a little far ahead because I still want to dive into some other topics, but what would you say to people who are listening who are kind of maybe between both worlds, still, looking externally to specialists, doctors, etc., for the answers? I can give my few takes on it, but I'd love to hear yours.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, I work in Western medicine. So, do I have a belief in the doctors? I mean, my husband was a psychiatrist and he worked so hard and he had passion for what he did. Um, so, I still have to have that belief that we are there to serve people, and Western medicine does have a lot of benefits. And, big fat and. Um, And we always want to say, if you're having some sort of medical condition, you're having a symptom that's ongoing, please go check with your doctor. Go get things checked out. You'd rather be safe than sorry, right? Go get it checked out. And if there isn't anything that's showing up clinically wrong, and somebody tells you, or you start to believe it's all in your head, well, maybe in a way it is, but not in the way that we might have perceived in the beginning, where there was something wrong with us, but nobody could see it, right? We weren't seen. And if that is the case, and you can't find a clinical definitive explanation for why you're having sudden onset of chest pain, arrhythmias, you're having anxiety symptoms, you're having this ongoing persistent rash that spikes at different times of the year, different times of the day, seek out a holistic practitioner to just see if there's something that we can dig a little bit deeper. And I think what we've talked about, Tara, is the fact that we also have this ownership towards our own body, and we are able to find those things. I feel like when people go to seek support, though, it really helps to hear somebody say, you're not crazy.
Yeah.
The symptoms that have no definitive cause, I know you feel them. Let's honor that. Let's honor that feeling. Where is it? How long has it been there? I have seen patients, Tara, I promise you, like, again, if I had a penny every time this has happened in the past year and a half, I'd probably be able to pay off my mortgage. Where somebody had something that was just at times outlandish per se, and the doctors couldn't find anything. Nothing was on CT, MRI, X-ray, lab work was fine. And I sat down with them on the little rolly chair in the ER and just said, well, tell me about it. I'm sure it hurts. Can you tell me about the pain? When did it start? Oh, you started having chest pain 2 days ago? What happened 2 days ago? Your mother died? That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
You make sense. All of this makes sense. I have had patients walk out of the ER like miraculously healed. No problem. They received no medication whatsoever because they had something validated that was screaming for attention.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's the illumination. It's being able to see ourselves differently, tilting that lens just slightly so we can have that area of ourselves illuminated, seen, understood, that is hard to see and and that is the evolution of consciousness, when we're able to shift our lens inward and look at ourselves a little bit differently in that way. Well, that's wonderful. Well, I mean, I think you know, you're where you're at for a reason, and people.
Would you stop telepathically communicating with me? Because I was just gonna say, I'm wearing that for a reason.
Yeah, well, that's it. I
This
know.
is why I love
That's
you.
that's our relationship. We're one mind.
That's so funny.
It's been like this since the start. Yes. Yes, I had a rash actually. It was interesting. I know you have your experience, and this year actually, still 2025. I had one that was persistent, and it was a little bugger. It was one that had been with me on and off for years, but it became very exasperated this year, and it took probably about 3 or 4 months for me to finally calm it down, or have it fully released, I should say. And I didn't think for a while, I didn't think that it would actually leave, because it felt like it was around for quite some time, but it really allowed for me to connect the dots within myself of what anxiety and what pressures am I holding on to, and what's ruminating within my mind, and what is the relationship with that symbolically. So it was in my right armpit, but my right side has the masculine side is where I've had all of my issues on my right side of my body. And then the armpit, being very vulnerable place in our body, very sensitive, showing me so much about my own vulnerabilities and the role of the masculine in my life in many different ways. And so when the rash was flaring up, I was able to see it and work with it. And just my path, what I've chosen, without any kind of remedy, medication, etc., just simply through understanding my body. And I mean, that's my path. I don't impose it on anyone, but I can share what I've been through and what I've learned to help inspire or make sense of some of these things. But we've become, and I see it so much now, and you probably see it as well. I mean, you've already touched on it, how removed from our bodies we become in our life. You know, we think that our body is separate. We think that our body is just doing something randomly, is just a cause of old age, or it's a cause of this, or it's a cause of that, like you mentioned earlier as well. Maybe speak to that, like how we just kind of like acquiesce in a way, or just sort of like give up in a way to the fact that our body's simply just doing something random, or it's broken, or it's not well, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, what I've noticed is people own it. Like, I like to use the analogy of, you wear a name tag that says, "Hi, my name is Chrystal." That's my identity. Especially the past year, I've heard, and it's interesting about this rash, and I'll just share it with the group really quickly, just to touch on it. My husband, Ari, was a psychiatric nurse practitioner. He took his life 3 years ago. I had a midbrain stroke. And so my masculine was very vulnerable. And so I developed this insane skin rash. And there was one right under the right armpit. It mirrored. And I was polar opposite of Tara. I did seek Western medicine help and tried everything, and nothing worked. And so not only was I uncomfortable, miserable, I felt defeated. I felt like I must be broken. My body is failing me. Well, that's the connection, is people are identifying with whatever ailment they have. So they'll say, "Oh, it's just my autoimmune disease. It's mine." Well, I've already claimed it then, if it's mine. "Oh, it's just my headache acting up again." Well, maybe it doesn't have to be mine anymore. And maybe there's a little bit more. Maybe is it yours? Or maybe are you possibly taking on the emotion of somebody that you live with, or you sleep next to at night, or you're thinking about because they're afraid, right? I mean, I think that there's so much, especially with the interconnectedness. And I think that you can say people do have a diagnosable autoimmune condition. My question is why? where did that start? And that's where Tara and I work together in that sense of, can we dig a little bit deeper? But it's interesting when we talk about these different, like those solar flares and how astrology and the planets and the planetary shifts kind of all come together with this stuff. When you see a whole bunch of people with very similar patterns, one would wonder, why not look a little bit deeper? Are we clearing? Is there an ancestral purge? Because I would say, especially with the skin rash, I thought, well, again, my body's failing me. I had this massive trauma 3 years ago, although I had trauma my entire life. But here's this massive trauma, and now I am aggravated, irritated, defenseless, all of the beliefs, right? But then I sit with my IT guy in the ER, and he's got a very similar rash on the right hand, just like I do. And I said, I won't say his name on camera, but I'm like, this is insane. I have got the same rash you do. And he said, no way. And I said, can I see your hands? And he was so ashamed. He's like, what do you mean? I said, don't worry. I'll call him Mike. I said, because look, and I showed him my hands, and I still do have some right now. It's kind of flaring up today. But I said, you don't have to be ashamed of it. Look, I've got the same thing. And I just asked him, when did it start? And I kid you not, Tara, within a few weeks of each other, our skin rash just popped up out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. And we're in the year of the snake, where we're shedding all of this old skin, the old trauma.
Yes. Yeah.
You can't make that up.
So on point. Absolutely. So let's go into the common symptoms of the solar flares that you find. We'll compartmentalize. So we'll look at the solar flares. Mm-hmm. Schumann would be different. Is that in a different category? And then you have the
Schumann is going to be in the same generalized category per se, mm-hmm. as that, like the CMEs and stuff like that, where you're getting, the anxieties, like the spike of agitation. We usually see like a spike in what we call like psychiatric, they call them psych patients, but they're not psych patients. They're just having some sort of psychiatric flare up. Where I just believe that the nervous system is going haywire. Mm-hmm. It's got too much heat.
Yeah. And then coupled with our unacknowledged hitting those fears and unprocessed memories, kind of like
that's the biggest one.
Yeah, that's what it is. So, and I wanted to also add, like, as we're going through these surges of purging and releasing and shifting from this energy that's coming in, there's part of it that's naturally going to flush out some of this old energy or old dormant stuff within us, just by causation. But then some of it, well, I would say actually most of it, is going to require us to meet it halfway. So we can do this work, probe within, ask those questions, sit with it, address our fears, what's becoming heightened and exasperated when we're anxious, what is causing that anxiety, what are we afraid of, where have we lost trust, where have we lost that sense of peace and alignment within ourselves. And that's what this is teaching us, is to meet it in that place, to ask those questions or observe within ourselves, where am I pushing too hard, what am I running from? What is that discomfort showing me on a deeper level? What are the patterns that I'm continually living by? That's the main gift that this is giving us. But unfortunately, we're not educated at that capacity to, probe into those areas.
Well, because you think about it, it's just like any relationship, right? And unfortunately, society has lived unhealthy relationships with their partners, with their family systems, with themselves for as long as there have been people, I'm sure. And it's getting worse unless we change it. So you wouldn't, and I guess some people would, I can't say nobody would. I would not expect my romantic partner to put in, let's say 80%, and I only put in 20. You meet a relationship 50-50, and you speak to your partner. Let's say, I have a childhood memory of alcoholism, and the smell of alcoholism or alcohol in general, or the sound or the change in the tone of voice of somebody who's drinking will trigger something within me because of, an event when I was 5. If I just yell and scream at my partner and say, "Why are you drinking again? Blah, blah, blah." That's not, you're just going to butt heads. But if you sit with your partner, and again, our bodies are partner, and say, "Listen, honey," in a gentle tone or kindly, I know this really isn't about you. And maybe it is. But there's something within me. Some people can't even name it yet. There's something within me that every time I see you and the way that your face changes or the way your voice changes, I start to feel anxious. Is there any way you can meet me halfway with it? Most of the time, if you're in a good, healthy relationship, the partner would say, "Yeah, but you got to name it to heal it."
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes the truth is hard as well.
Always hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Going through that layer of not wanting to hear the truth or face the truth. And the truth sometimes leads to a new layer of fear that is protecting us.
Most of us have dissociated our entire life. So being in a body is so uncomfortable.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so looking at, Schumann, what is it, CMEs?
Like coronal mass ejection. So if you're saying like there's this big spot in the sun, and right now we've got one coming directly to us. So again, I believe that's why I have the rash. It's the heat. My body always feels stuff early. That's how we had all of the auroras that were all over the United States that aren't usually there. So that's different. That's when you're getting like that mass ejection from the sun, the light of the sun. Moon cycles are different. Those are fun. People in the emergency department, it's even if they don't understand it, there's always this running joke of when we have an influx of patients at all, but especially with like psych complaints or arrhythmias, so their hearts are racing, they've got chest pain. Oh, the other one big is, that massive headache, and they always tell you, if you get that like clap headache, you have to go into the ER because you could be having a stroke. And again, I'm not telling anyone you shouldn't go to the ER if you feel those symptoms. You should go get it checked out. It's better to be safe than sorry and have somebody tell you you're not having a stroke. But, stroke-like symptoms, those are very common with, and that's also with the change of the moon. So that's going to be similar, the head stuff usually, with like the Schumann, with the CMEs, and with the fluctuations of the moon.
Do people think you're weird?
Always. Yep. It got so bad. And I think that was my biggest fear, was I was always the outcast, and I was always the black sheep as a child. So I tried so hard to fit in as an adult. I mean, I think we've discussed it before. I have so many letters behind my name now that I don't even remember them all, because I was hunting for somebody to accept me for me. And now I just embrace the weird. Like, it got so, I wouldn't say bad, but like, again, this year was very intense for most of us. And when I'm saying, I'm trying to find this cause and reason to explain me to me. And, I'm starting to find all of these aha moments, and I would say them out loud. Either people would roll their eyes at me and they're like, "Oh yeah, of course she's going on that, kick again." I wouldn't know if, I don't know if I would say irritated or just, I don't know, that I went through and started making tinfoil hats for my coworkers in the ER. Just as, a joke that, at least you'll have your tinfoil hats when we get hit with solar flares. Yes, everybody always thinks I'm weird.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think you're in that place for more than just one reason that we've already covered, but for
Yeah.
yourself to overcome the complex or the uncertainty of yourself in that dynamic. I mean, you're right in the thick of it. Like you couldn't be in a more intense environment
Mm-hmm.
dealing with past events historically
Mm-hmm.
of being silenced, ostracized, outcast, punished, etc. for that kind of belief in a system like that. I mean, so when, you know, allowing yourself to feel accepted for who you are, for you, or
Mm-hmm.
accepting yourself in that environment, and solely for believing what you believe in, or knowing what you know, and being who you are, and all of those dimensions of yourself, but also the people around you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like maybe it's affecting some people in ways of changing themselves and opening up new perspectives and new avenues of thought.
Mm-hmm.
And that industry can be very rigid and very locked
Mm-hmm.
into its own belief and its own practice in its own way. And here you are right in the middle of it. Like it's amazing. Good for
Yeah,
you.
it's funny because I really believe that. Because I've definitely have seen the people that have, kind of snickered and laughed at me behind my back into my face. And then the same people, when nobody was looking, would come into my office and would say, "Okay, but now really, I've got this issue and I want to know, like, what do you think's going on?" Right? What's going on in the astrology? Or, and I'll just ask them these questions. I'm not going to solve it for them. I can't. But I just give them these little questions that they can probe within themselves. Right? When did it start? And I like to use EFT. And sometimes I don't use EFT directly with, my coworkers, right? Let's go and tap on this event. But usually, if you can name it, right? Well, what color does that sensation feel like when you think of this neck pain that won't go away? When did it start? Is there a shape connected to it? Is there a color? Is there a taste, a smell, a sound? And usually, even with just those things, or they're triggering their mind and they feel safe with somebody, they'll have those aha moments and it will release. But what I really see I mean, of course, I see it with coworkers, but it's the patients. And that gives me so much joy. And I would say that was the hardest thing for me to even say I could embody, was after Ari died. He was the joyful one. And I would walk around my neighborhood, Tara, and I would say, "Well, I know Ari felt it." And he would say to go find Joy. And I would walk around my neighborhood and I would say, "Well, Joy, where are you?" Literally, I'm like, "Joy, I know you're here. Where are you?" And it started with the little tiny things like a ladybug. And I would just like be so enmeshed in this beautiful ladybug. And I'm like, "Oh, wait, there's Joy." Right? Joy is what you see and how you see it and how you perceive it. And it's in my heart, I can feel joy when there is a patient that is very distraught, uncomfortable, in pain. Like the pain is real and there's no reason and cause. And they're dismissed again. And I go and sit next to them. And I take way longer than I should to do any chest x ray known to man, or a CT scan that should take 15 minutes and it takes me an hour. Thankfully, I haven't gotten in trouble for that yet. I'll say yet. But they just needed to have somebody validate the pain. So, yeah, I think that's been my biggest mission And I would say at this point, for me, luckily, it's almost mission complete. I can feel that joy.
Mm, beautiful. What are your hopes for the medical industry with this, with regards to this?
Well, my hopes are that they'll be more open-minded and they'll be willing to look at the whole body, whole system approach without shutting it down right away. Unfortunately, I still feel like we're a while off. Um, you know, in Western medicine, there's a pathway for everything. You follow a pathway. You follow a medication regimen. These are your classes of drugs you choose for these different things. There's not a whole lot of out of the box thinking. And I know that, you know, being a certified EFT practitioner, you know, the results are the results. We use it with combat vets, 86-ish% chance of it being effective in taking and getting rid of combat related PTSD in like 6 to 10 sessions. You can't make that up. I mean,
with EFT?
With EFT,
That's
combat vets that are not tapping, that aren't able to function really in society, that are highly medicated, that have no life other than eat, sleep, take meds, go to the doctor. And what if we were to tap with the veterans when they come back from being deployed? Why not tap with the veterans while they're in deployment? I mean, or, you know, the service members while they're in a deployment or while they're in training, to teach their nervous systems how to come back to center.
Or meditation, you know, to connect with their inner deeper self and tune in and self-regulate and
and I would never say, so my husband had this stance of, you know, he wasn't in the mindset of you never give meds. Obviously he was a Western medicine practitioner. He would say the medication that he would prescribe for many of his patients, I can't say all, many, was it delivered them a woo, is what we'd call it, a window of opportunity. Well, why not, instead of only presenting a patient with a psychiatric component, i.e. acute anxiety, depression symptoms, why not, instead of only giving them a year, well, you don't prescribe a year, but, you know, let's say a 3-month supply of Prozac or Zoloft or anything, you know, I'm not promoting any names, but any of those things, why don't you do that in conjunct with a, you know, let's dive into the messages of the body. Let's do some EFT tapping. Let's find the root during our window of opportunity where we have more bandwidth to sit with the emotions, when we're not numbing them out completely. We're looking at them, but maybe they don't have to be as intense. And for many of us, maybe we don't need meds at all. Maybe we can just come back to center, come back to the body, pendulate, learn that it can be safe in the body. Some of us never knew what being safe in the body ever felt like.
Yeah.
So you've got to pendulate it, meaning you go into the messages of the body. You trigger that nervous system a little. You're digging up some dirt. Now let's tap. Let's calm the body. Let's do some regulations. Let's calm the vagus nerve. Let's get out of fight, flight, freeze mode, because that's where most people are on a daily basis. They never come out of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And then these energies exasperate those conditions that they're in. And that's what elevates the heart. That's what creates the headaches, the stroke-like symptoms, the fear, the panic, the worry, because it feels like we're losing control. And the more that we hold on to control, it's that contracted state. The more we hold on to control, I need to feel safe. I need to have my body feel like it's okay. And then if there's like a fluctuation or a heightened condition, then we just go into this a whole level of fear that heightens the heart rate even more and puts us into that state of fear or survival, maybe.
Yeah. The fear, the false evidence appearing real. We're going back
Mm-hmm.
into some other past time when this happened. And it's interesting how, like, even trauma is in the DNA of our ancestors. So, like, even if maybe you didn't have any acute trauma, which most people have, but even if you didn't, maybe your mother did, maybe your grandmother did, and it does pass through the DNA. You do carry a component of that. And until we learn to get safe within the body, we're going to replay these stories on a loop.
Yeah, exactly.
It's interesting. I sneak it in oftentimes, especially with patients that are having like acute panic attacks. And, the doctors have been in, and, I'm just sitting there. I will just teach them how to do some simple breath work.
Mm.
If they can, 4 to 6 seconds in through the nose and hold it. I'll teach them box breathing, in and out through the nose. Or you teach them a cool trick. It calms the vagus nerve pretty quickly, or it sends signals to the vagus nerve to calm down. And then it sends signals to the body that you're not in fight, flight, freeze. It's very simple. If you notice, and Tara, I'll just ask you, where's your tongue at right now in your mouth?
Roof of my mouth.
That's totally a symptom of being in fight, flight, freeze mode. You're activated. And again, at this moment in time, why not be activated? You're doing a live YouTube video.
It's actually at the top of my roof most times. I have a history of like pushing even at night when I sleep, I'll wake up in the morning with my tongue pushing up or to the side or front, and my teeth are all out of alignment. So I'm going to have to get that corrected at some point. But yeah, that's like my one indicator. If I want to check in with myself, I just see where thank you for pointing that out because I'm actually pretty relaxed right now, but it's so deep that we get used to it. We get used to that, either if it's a major symptom or a subtle symptom, we just adapt to it, right? We adapt around it.
Yep. So when I'm in the ER with the patients, I'll teach them heart math, the slow, easy breathing, getting their breath just, to do the sine wave, slow and easy. And it's funny because it's notorious. It'll work within a few minutes. I'll just say, where's your tongue out? And they're like, oh, the roof of my mouth. Okay. Gently focus on relaxing it to the floor of the mouth. Now I'll just tell them, I just go like this. I'll talk to them. I'll hold it there. And just focus on keeping it on the floor of your mouth. And I think it's like 90 seconds. I'll have to look back to be sure. But Dr. Dawson Church, who was my mentor and teacher in EFT, he wrote a book. And in the book, it talks about putting the tongue on the floor of the mouth. He did a ton of research studies on it. And I think it's like 90 seconds. It will send the signals to the vagus nerve, which sends signals throughout the body that it can calm down. You're not being chased by saber-toothed tiger, because the brain does not know the difference between I am being actively chased by a saber-toothed tiger, it will eat me, and here's a paper tiger that I just caught in the peripheral vision of my eye that looks like that tiger I was running from when I was 6. My body is in full activation mode in the exact same way, playing the same story.
Yeah. Yeah, mine's an old life, soul, like past life story with my mouth. It's been replaying over and over and over again. But I learned something new, so thank you for that. I'm going to practice that more. 90 seconds.
And then one thing you had asked earlier about the difference. Can I touch on the moon cycles a little bit? So obviously we have the moon. There's that running joke when we have an influx of patients, we'll say, oh, it must be a full moon, day or night, right? But there's something to that, even if people aren't aware of what it is. Most people that work in the emergency department will say that they are aware of something goes on during a full moon. Well, if you think, just if we're thinking about the Earth, the moon affects the tidal waves and the tides of the ocean and the water, right? Does it come in or does it go out, right? How are the waves of the ocean? Well, our bodies are 70% water. So we are literally a tidal organism. So therefore, if we are 70% water and we're a tidal organism, we are affected by the moon cycles, whether it's the full moon, whether it's the new moon. It's, the moon is closer, like right now, tomorrow, actually, I think it's 3:15 tomorrow. I think it'd be 2:15 my time. Anyway, when we have the supermoon and it's closer to Earth, it's going to affect us more. The physical body, it will affect the physical body. Headaches, see it all the time. Pressure, tension. Again, I feel it here.
Yeah.
And one thing I've noticed lately, and I don't know if it's something that everyone else is noticing, but I would say if people were to just take a minute, a lot of people are having physical symptoms within the solar plexus. That's our life force. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of old trauma that's been stuck there, or we've stuffed our pain down, or trauma or an emotion down there. And I mean, I had it myself, and I usually don't have gut issues, but just the sudden onset of stabbing pains, again, right here, right in our energy center, our life force center, and the nausea, the vomiting, we're trying to purge it out.
Yeah. And again, dismissing it as a signal to work with it and to understand ourselves more. Mm-hmm. It's that the Ophiuchus archetype in action, turning pain into medicine, going into the pain, going into the discomfort, inquiring, feeling, sensing, seeing patterns, understanding your thoughts, what you're facing in your life at that moment in your life, the challenges that you might be going through. These are all amazing signposts, cues, clues that we can use for healing through the pain rather than dismissing it and becoming familiar with it and just surviving through it.
Yeah, because we become the medicine at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
We become the healer and the healer.
Mm-hmm.
And there is something, I still believe this to this day. And I will never down talk any other modality. And I will say, when we go to a healer, the healer can only help you to the extent of what they've chosen to look at within themselves.
Mm-hmm. Or what the person is willing to see within themselves.
How deep are they willing to go within themselves?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah.
It's not an easy road, but I will say 3 years out, and I can't say that I'm not sad that Ari died. And I can say that that pain has given me the ability to look at things that I wouldn't have my whole entire life. It has been the pain and the medicine.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And I would have only found that choosing to look at it, choosing to go back into the fracture, and not just trying to put glue. I tried that for the first year and a half, 2 years, put glue on all the pieces, and I'm going to put the vase back together quickly. Now it's like, oh, wait, here's a piece of the vase. I'm going to look at it first and acknowledge that this was a broken part and say, oh, okay, acknowledge you. Maybe I don't need to glue it back together yet. I'll just put it to the side. And then I'll look at another piece. And this is where I love Dr. Michael Lincoln's work, was he gifted us so much knowledge in that.
Yeah.
The world just wasn't ready.
No.
But we are. We
are. And many people are starting to So I just have to plug my laptop in. And more people are starting to
Mhm.
question and look for answers that they haven't been able to find before, obviously, searching for other avenues and insights and to understand themselves more, because we reach a point, some of us, maybe not all of us, but I feel this is the way that we transform, is hitting these walls where, again, doing what we did doesn't work, and repeating the same thing and expecting different results doesn't work. And then we
Mhm.
get finally pushed into, or maybe there's something that clicks, or one of
Mhm.
your colleagues asks you what's happening in the stars, and then they start realizing that that's a real thing, and so
Mhm.
they start on that path, and they open up their mind more to those avenues. This is how we
Mhm.
open up more of ourself and heal and transform. And it is part of the evolutionary process. We do have to, for some of us, myself, yourself, have had to go through the depths and repeating old patterns until finally there's just that one point where something has to change. And that puts you into a whole different stream of
Mhm.
self-exploration and examination. So it is happening. The shift is happening more and more because we have to.
Mhm.
And when we
Shift
get
of the
there,
ages, huh?
pardon?
It's the shift of the ages.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's beautiful. Okay, well, we covered a lot. If there's anyone watching, if anybody has any questions for Chrystal, please feel free to add it into the chat. I feel that we are going to have many discussions as we move forward. We're definitely working together, and we have our retreat this next weekend, the weekend of the 13th, 14th in December. So we'll be reminding everyone of that to join. This is going to be educational and experiential.
Mhm.
And yeah, there'll be much more as we move along. So thank you so much, Chrystal, for your time and sharing your insights and wisdom and experiences. It was really great to chat with you.
You too. I was just thinking when we picked the dates, right? And it just came to me today how when you look at Ophiuchus or you look at the great attractor in astrology, it's all about being able to look around the corner, being able to see around the corner, plan, but we're also hitting something called the nodes of fate, the south, north and south node. Um, and in Gemini, they're at 13 degrees. There's a big thing about 13. And when you talk about bending the nodes of fate, that means that you can change things. There are some things you would say you have to learn, but there are some things that maybe we can look around the corner and clear it before it causes a dis-ease or something. And to me, maybe it's just me, there's something big about that number and the fact that we chose the 13th when we're bending the nodes of fate in astrology.
Ooh, I love that. That is interesting. I've actually
Mhm.
haven't heard of that before. I think you maybe mentioned it in passing before, but I haven't
Crystal's
really.
crappy astrology lesson 101.
It's good. It's good. I'll have to look into it more. I think you mentioned it probably. I'll have to look into it in more detail. But I always looked at the 13 as the karmic debt number is very, it's the 13, the number that the hidden number. That actually is really interesting with Ophiuchus. The 13th, in hotels and in apartments, the 13th floor is always hidden. It's like the
Mhm.
hidden number that people don't
Mhm.
want to look at, that people don't want to
Mhm.
face.
And
Karmic
now
debt.
we're bending the nodes of fate.
I like that. I really do.
We're going to choose to look around the corner and clear it.
Hmm. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay. Well, on that note, we're going to go work on our bending of fate for,
Yes,
for
ma'am.
our event. But yeah, if anyone has any questions or comments, or even if they want to leave them afterwards, I'll tag you on any questions and you can respond.
Okay.
But that is it. That is all for now. Thank you again for joining. And this is a really great discussion. I think we need to keep it moving.
I agree. Thank you for
Mhm.
having me.
Thanks, Chrystal.
Okay. See you next time.